Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Hot Seat with Anna. Today, I've got Jacob Batten with me. That's a guy who knows how to take messy systems, tangle tools, and tiny budgets and actually make them work. So, Jacob is a founder of Batten Technologies and a badass software developer who works with all type of businesses, small to big. And today we are talking about building a smart but affordable tech stack for small businesses. And yes, we are keeping it real, practical, and a little spicy. Jacob, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you for having me, Anna. I really appreciate
Thanks for being here. I don't know if you appreciate it when we're finished.
it.
So, Jacob, let's jump right in. Speaking about kind of low budget startups, small businesses that are still looking to grow and expand, if a founder had a budget of up to $200 a month, what's the smartest tech stack you would force them to build? So, what kind of tech tools would you recommend?
So, if you're bootstrapped, you're a solo entrepreneur, you're trying to get a company together, you know you can spend $200 a month. Well, number one, you got to look and appear professional. So to start off, I would say have your own domain. Have your own email service. I recommend Microsoft 365. Google Workspace is an excellent option as well. Do not get suckered into GoDaddy or anybody else. Those are the two top players who you should be hosting your business with, because it also encompasses your documents and your storage and a lot of stuff that comes with that email license. Under 20 bucks a month. So domain, email, that's 40 bucks right there. Domain's only it's 20 bucks a year, but we'll factor it in. From there, you need to be able to run your business. You need to be able to manage your data yourself, your time. I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to recommend Business Suite Pro, which is our SaaS product. It's CRM, billing, time management, all in one. So you really get a great value. And that starts at $97 per user. So very first user, we're in it for under 140 bucks at this point. And you can now spend some money on, business cards, on looking into maybe outsourced help from the Philippines.
Okay, I like where it's going.
Setting, right? So there's a lot that you can do, but focus on your important expenses first, your basic bread and butter, just to prove that you are a professional and have your own brand identity. That may involve $20 a month for a website. 50 bucks to get a logo designed on Fiverr or whatever service you want to use. But ultimately, that's what it is. And depending on what your actual business is, if you're a graphic designer, you're going to need a subscription to Creative Cloud. If depending on what your business is, you'll need your industry specific tools as well.
Yeah. So what would be the next step? Let's assume the professional established themselves, have a small team, are in that second stage where they would like to become a small business rather than a solopreneur or a startup. So what would be the next step up after, having a domain, email, and things like that, all the basics lined up?
The next step you want to do is work on what your organization is going to look like. What are your processes going to look like, and how do you keep those well enforced might be too strong of a word, but you need to have an ability to maintain and control the structures that you put in place for yourself and for your team as you grow. Again, Business Suite Pro has a lot of really great tools and solutions to manage a small team, to keep track of everybody's time, to at a glance see how effective everybody's time is being utilized and invested in the company, and codify those processes into repeatable and automated solutions. So automation becomes a big part of growing your team. A lot of people think of automation as a way to avoid growing your team, but automation is what makes small and growing teams work better. We can only do so much as humans to be perfect, but having repeated automated processes kind of help keep us honest is a big push to grow your business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some people think, though, I speak to my friends who are growing their businesses, that you need kind of really expensive software, professional software to look professional. What's your take on it? How do you feel about it?
You know
Especially
what
professionals like white collar, lawyers. A lot of lawyers talk about, I need to be on my case, on Clio and Westlaw. So how do you feel about it?
Well, my opinion is that what works for one company is not necessarily the best fit for another company. So Clio is a fantastic industry standard product you mentioned. My case is another. There's a lot of law firms out. In South Florida alone has it's over 50,000, I believe, law firms, and each of them is going to have their own specific needs. And for a large number of them, Clio is going to be a great fit. My case is going to be a great fit. Business Suite Pro might be a great fit.
Mhm.
But ultimately, each company has their own persona, their own branding, their own style, their own way of doing things. So we try to be more of a one size fits one company as opposed to a one size fits all. And because we believe that professional software doesn't have to be expensive, or at least
Mm.
not to look professional, right? But if you have expensive software, it had better look professional, and it doesn't always. So the price and the professionality are not necessarily linked to each other.
That's true. So thinking about kind of popular things and popular tools, it goes kind of in stages. Suddenly this tool is mega popular. Everyone feels they have to have it. And then 2 years later, it's something else. So what's one tool that everyone recommends at the moment, but you think it's totally unnecessary for early stage companies?
I mean, here at the end of 2025, the big buzzword for everybody is almost always AI.
Mhm,
AI is running everything. AI is pushing the economy, the market.
mhm,
It's answering all the emails and reading all the emails. At what point, does anyone actually do any work if AI is doing all these great things for us, right?
mhm.
I think it's, in many cases, a fantastic tool for a lot of small business owners, large business owners, medium, but really, has a lot of applicability for consumers. We have clients where AI is the product, or we have clients where AI is helping them run their business. We have clients where AI is pretending to be team members on the business so they can look bigger and more professional. Um, Ultimately, the tools don't matter so much as the product and the process. It really comes down to what is your business? What are you doing? What are you selling? And how do you get there? And in many cases, AI might be a fantastic tool to help you achieve your goals. It might be very complementary to the processes in your business. Um, but in the majority of cases, and I'm going to say it is the majority, traditional methods, work best. The old way of doing things still works best. How do we improve traditional methods of doing those things rather than jumping on the bandwagons and the
Yeah.
fads? Is AI going to be, as hyped up as it is today in 10 years? We don't know. We don't know. It could be really amazing, honestly. But generally speaking, these things improve over time. So 10 years from now, who knows what the next big fad is going to be? But I can tell you a lot of the, bread and butter type of tools and technologies that we use today and have been using for the past, 25, 30, 40, 50 years in technology will continue to have their place in the work environment one way or another. And, we're going to have all these new fancy tools connecting to the old tools. So uh, new and fancy isn't always the best thing.
I agree. So, Jacob, you have a good sense of humor because I know you personally. And provisors, a fellow provisors member, I told them I'll be interviewing you today, and they sent me a question for you, kind of a little bit of a cheeky one. What's one part of your job that you think you can do better than 95% of people in your field?
I didn't realize it was supposed to be a cheeky question. I'll answer it honestly. I'll start there. Education and technical communication. Most app developers, most software providers are not particularly invested in the expertise of their clients, right? I really like to make sure that if I'm doing a custom software project for a client, I'm taking their ideas and building it into their app and selling it to their clients. I want to know that they have some ownership in the creative process. I want them to know that, God forbid, I get hit by a bus or an airplane, I'm going to, they're going to have the knowledge and prior guidance to move forward with their business, right? I don't want anyone to ever treat me like a bottleneck in their business. So I really try to empower my clients to understand how software is developed, what the lifecycle management looks like once it is developed, and how to succeed and excel. A lot of people come to me and they say, "Hey, I don't want to be a software company, but I want to sell a software product. I want you to be my software provider." And I said, "Listen, that makes you a software company.
Very
We're just
smart.
helping you develop your stack. And we need you to, understand what this means for you long term as the proprietor of a software company." So we're very, very engaged in education for our clients. We really want them to understand the products that they're paying for.
Thank you. Back to business. What's your rule for deciding? Buy a tool, automate a process, or keep it manual?
It really comes down to inputs, right? What's the level of input required? And I think about three critical inputs:
Mm,
time, data, and creativity. Time is what we all have the least amount to offer, right? Data is the tedious part of it. How much do I have to physically, type in to the boxes to make this process work? How readily available is that data, right? And lastly, creativity. Now, creativity is a special factor because time is like, our premium, but creative time is even higher,
mm,
is an even greater premium because in our day, you and I as business owners, we have a limited amount of time to spend on a out of band task. And if that task requires more creative input than another task, it's harder to start. It's harder to gauge completeness. that's usually the part where people want to bring in the AI to help them with the creativity. um, and so we have to think about those three factors. If a task requires a lot of time, but not a lot of data and almost no creativity, that's super easy to automate. If it requires a little bit of creativity and almost no time or data, let's keep
Mm,
it manual. But if we have to keep a lot of data in hand. For example, I had a client, they did a appraisal work. They had to generate a 175-page report from data that they collect during their engagement. And we're talking, 20, 30, 40 sheets of an Excel file, really complicated stuff, and maybe two, three, 400 data points. And so sometimes the work might take months just to prepare the
mm,
inputs to generate that automated report. So we have to look at those types of scenarios and figure out, okay, how do we turn this into a process? How do we build a special tool to make this easier, faster, more reproducible? So not a short answer, but we try to factor in the three critical components of what would severely limit growth in a small enterprise.
mhm. Interesting. Makes sense. I never thought about it that way, actually. So something learned today. Thank you. So how do you know we all have a tech stack, but how do you know it's time to upgrade a tool? Not because it's shiny, but because it's actually limiting your growth.
I use the same three factors for both, to be honest with you, because it's the same question sort of flipped. It's like, what do I need to do differently from what I'm doing now in order to be more efficient, more effective?
Mm,
Um, and if my current tools are not the most effective and most efficient tools and not the best fit for my current practice, whether maybe my practice has changed, maybe my processes have been adjusted, maybe my clientele has shifted, my industry has changed, for whatever the reason might be, we're
mm,
seeing that, hey, I'm limited by my current tools. Let's improve the tools. Let's find a better tool. And that becomes a discovery process. What is the best solution here? Do I need to make a tweak to my process in my current tool? Do I need
mm.
to build a new one? Do I need to start over? So whatever really, and it really depends on what is the gap. How big of a difference do we need to make things right?
Well, speaking about, it being a complete mess, I would like to know some interesting stories from your clients. So what's the most painful mistake you've seen when someone tried to DIY the tech stack? Did you have clients who came to you and were a complete mess and you were like, oh my God, how did you even get yourself into that?
So I used to do a lot of work in the travel and lodging industry.
Mhm,
I had one client who was working for years to build a tour agency.
mhm,
They had a very specific idea for a business to serve cruise ship patrons when they're here in Port Miami or Port Everglades,
mhm,
and they put a lot of work into building their website, into marketing themselves, into building their booking engine. But then they went. I'm not saying they went super cheap, but they went low quality, trying to get the booking engine built out. They didn't want to use an existing system.
mm,
Um, they wanted to build their own thing. They had their reasons for it,
mhm,
right or wrong. And they hired somebody in Eastern Europe who kind of just did whatever they wanted to for a couple of years and wrote a bunch of code, said it all worked, handed it off, and nothing worked. And they said, "Hey, Jacob, come save us." And I said,
mm,
"There's like almost no code here. We have to really rewrite the whole thing." And they weren't happy with that answer. They basically heard like, "Hey, are you taking advantage of me? Did they take advantage of me?" No one likes to hear that you're going to take advantage of, right?
mhm,
Um, and I had that happen to me a few times in that industry. Another time, a similar client, they were building a channel manager for vacation rentals. They wanted to be able to push your properties out on Airbnb, Booking.com,
mhm,
and three or four others that existed at that time. This is 10 plus years ago.
yeah,
And he hired a gentleman in New Zealand to build him this channel connector. He came
mhm,
to us. We were doing vacation rental software at the time, and he said, "We want to connect this all. Help. I want to bring you in personally, separately, to help me with just the channel connector." And there was literally no code there. Like it was a pretty looking
magic.
website and no code.
Oh my
Guy
God.
had spent his entire life savings on it and
Oh,
had nothing to show for it. And had based on what he had spent and all the stuff that he had prepared to design it and develop it, he had a lot of people who had invested
mm.
in integrating with his technology. And it was, disheartening to learn that there really wasn't anything there.
Oh gosh, that sounds like a complete disaster. I feel sorry for them. But we all been there. At the beginning when I just founded the company, you try to cut corners, and then, and I always now say, you pay what you get what you pay for, and it's so true with providers. Unfortunately, I had website screw ups, technology screw ups, a lot of money down the drain on nothing. Had to be redone from scratch. But it sounds like you really know what you're doing. Maybe it's just me because I'm not tech savvy. But what's a question no one ever asks you about your expertise, but they should?
What they don't ask me about, but they should, is how did I, learn to figure out the right technology for a given
Mhm.
solution? Um, they should ask me this because everyone's just like usually somewhat incredulous. Like, how do you know this? Why is that the case? Like people, I think in general suffer from a bit of confirmation bias. They know something's wrong, they have it in their head, and they want to challenge it. And I think that's part of the human nature, and part of why they have a career. But I really feel like, I've learned what I have through a lot of trial and error. I've been in my industry now for over 25 years,
Oh, wow.
developing for the web, for mobile devices, for, I mentioned, for lodging industry. We've worked in medical industry. We've worked with blue collar trades. We've worked with pizza shops, Chinese restaurants.
Mm,
I've kind of had the luxury of experience in a lot
mm,
of different industries. And I love what I do because of the fact that I get to help so many different industries. Everyone needs systems and software and technology to run their business correctly, regardless of what you do. We work with lawyers and accountants as much as we work with generator and maintenance technicians and electricians, and we love it all. It's just a really good opportunity for me to get the experience of what everybody is doing. And I've worked with some really big Fortune 500 companies, both with and for them, and I have had the opportunity to see, what runs big businesses, and
mm.
it's generally not the fancy new things. It's the tried and true, industry built, driven, and accepted methods that technology providers have been using for decades. We put some fancy wrappers on it and make it work better. We try to modernize all of it, but
Mm.
ultimately on the back end, our systems are reliable because they're based on older technologies.
You clearly love what you're doing by the sound of it. I don't know how it's possible because I'm tech challenge person, let's put it that way. I still have my iPhone 13 because I can't bear the thought of upgrade, getting a new phone. And everyone says it's so easy, don't worry. Last time I changed my phones was 3 years ago. I didn't worry. And then everything got stuck in the cloud and I lost half of my contacts. So I do worry. But I see you love your work. But what's one thing that everyone assumes you love doing and you actually don't?
The first thing that always comes to mind is when people ask me to fix their printer or their Wi-Fi.
That's a
Can
good
I
one.
fix it? Yes, I don't want to. But you gave a really good example there with your iPhone. A study came out, I think it was just this week or in the last month or two. The average consumer, this is I believe I forget if it was American consumers or globally, is presently on the oldest version of their phones that they have been since the iPhone first came out and everyone was getting a new one every single year.
Mhm,
Um, I don't know if it's the cost or the fact that the technology is only incrementally improving at this point, but
mhm.
people feel comfortable, with that 3-year-old, 4-year-old phone. And I don't see a problem with that personally. I also have a 3-year-old phone. Um, it's 3 years old because my daughter destroyed it. And she's 3 years old. But we all have a bit of growth stress, regardless of what your strengths are. I have strengths in technology, but I don't like to change my devices. I still like to use things
Mm,
for several years because I like to get my money's worth. I like to get
mhm.
really familiar with things, and it can be challenging to learn a new system,
Yeah.
which is a challenge for me as a business owner trying to sell new systems. Hey, we have to make sure our clients are comfortable when they make that transition. And stuff like you mentioned, losing your files in the cloud, is a major hurdle for anyone to get a new device. And it's
Yeah.
hard to predict what's going to happen. So
Mm,
we, offer white glove services to our clients when they're migrating systems. We help them migrate their data. We don't just let them say, hey, the cloud's going to take care of it for you.
mm,
No, we're the cloud. Here's the cloud. It's in my hands. We're gonna sit there and we're gonna move your data for you. We're gonna make sure we get the data correctly as best we can, and we import it the best we can, and we make sure that it's validated and searchable and integrated and
mhm.
everything that it needs to be for your business. So
Mm.
in
Like,
short, I just tell you, hey,
just like a normal person, like all of
yeah,
us
yeah,
mortals, hating
exactly,
new
exactly.
technology. Okay, that's good to hear. So Jacob, last question. I know you're not expecting this question at all. But I find it's interesting. I think tech guys, software developers, yeah, like yourself, accountants, all have the reputation for being boring, no fun to be around, being very dry, introverted, well, for people like me who are bubbly and extroverted, just boring. But I know that you are a fun-loving person. It's fun working with you. You have great sense of humor. You have amazing stories. So tell us a little bit about Jacob outside work. Do you have any exciting hobbies? I know you have great family. Tell us a little bit about Jacob, non-tech guy that makes you a fun tech guy.
Well, wow, I appreciate that. We do have the reputation of being nerds in my industry. I've had a few people accuse me of that and not realize it was insulting. But I like to enjoy life, and I think that we do what we do because we want to enjoy the time when we are disconnected. So I have a 3-year-old daughter. We actually just got back last night from Disney. We took her to her first trip up to Disney World, and my wife and I, my wife works very hard. She owns a CPA firm, and so when we have our time off together, we really, try to indulge ourselves. We have the luxury of being able to travel pretty frequently. We have a great little spot in the Bahamas we love to frequent called Hopetown. Uh,
Oh,
and they got hit by a big hurricane a few years ago. So I was very inspired to help out, help regrow the town a little bit. I am very recently, I just got my pilot's license, so I fly small
ah,
planes.
wow,
And
congratulations.
thank you, thank you. A few years ago, I learned how to fly drones and got my commercial drone license. I've done a lot of interesting video work with, some big rap names and city of Miami and some local venues. So I do some video production in my spare time just for fun. It's nice to have hobbies. Um, and I enjoy working with my hands. So I have in the garage, I've got a wood shop and a metal shop. I love to, love to build things. In high school, I worked in a machine shop. I actually built motorcycles and race cars. A lot of odd, welding jobs and machining. So I've done a lot in my life, and I'm thankful for it to have had those opportunities. But yeah, I like to have a good time. I think that life can only be so digital, and we really need to cherish our analog hobbies.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Jacob, for being here today, sharing with us your time, your tips, your advice. I'm sure a lot of small business owners will learn from it and hopefully reach out to you for more advice and guidance, and maybe to discuss different tech stacks to what they are using now. And that was the latest Hot Seat with Anna episode. And next week, when we tune in, we will have a family lawyer being roasted by me, who will tell us how to protect our small businesses from being lost in a divorce. Thank you, Jacob. And
Thank you,
yeah,
Anna.
tune in next week.
This has been fantastic. I really enjoyed this.